My name is Jean-François Quéralt. I work for an organization called the IO Foundation. Our advocacy is digital rights with a sort of tendency to offer digital solutions for those rights, human rights and also digital rights. We work on 3 areas that we find are complementary. We raise awareness to the public and specifically to programmers, so they get to know and they get to understand the voice that they have in implementing solutions. We hope for that to create a critical mass that will influence policymaking and thus see these needs reflected properly in policies from governments. And at the same time, we offer at least proofs of concept on how certain elements that we identified as issues on human and digital rights to be solved by technological solutions. In the domain of distributed ledger technologies, despite the hype and specifically the tainted image that they have when it comes to cryptocurrencies, they go way, way beyond. Essentially, if you analyze what a DLT offers you is immutability in the data, which is something that we didn't have until recent years. And so what it really allows you to have is not specifically cryptocurrencies, but certifications in order to be able to certify a certain transaction, to make sure that no one can tamper with the information. And the direct result is that now, for the first time, properly implemented, and of course, solving all the issues in terms of energy consumption and all the negative elements that have been pegged to DLTs, it allows us to do a very interesting shift, which is passing trust from people into the technology, which is something we were not able to ensure so far. And so the typical direct implementation or application, which is one of the things that we work on in the IO Foundation, is how to implement services at the technological level to ensure protection and observance of certain rights, so that it's transparent for the user and they don't even have to complicate themselves into how to do it by themselves. Meaning to say, when it comes, for instance, to the example of data protection and data ownership, a typical example would be GDPR, which is a very good starting point for the conversation on how does it matter to have certain control on data, and how it would be interesting to be able to have a mechanism to eliminate or remove the data from a certain provider with which we are not feeling any connection anymore. The issue so far is that GDPR provides you only a legal way, therefore a very reactive way to act upon that problem. Now, if you think about it, digital technologies have allowed us to create an infrastructure that we can control, and we can determine how the code is observing or not observing those rights that we are so concerned about. So it is not unrealistic to consider that we have the capacity nowadays to implement software that would take care of enforcing that removal of data from the provider without me having to worry about whether it's actually happening or not. What happens nowadays is when I myself am a European citizen, so I can always act upon GDPR and say request Google or Facebook to eliminate all the data they have about me. And that's a legal right that I have, and I can act upon it. The problem is my request doesn't come attached with a team of specialists flying from Brussels all the way to where Facebook has their servers and making sure that that is actually happening. What we have right now is a chain of trust between the provider, a number of consultants, and lawyers and whatever, who they claim that has been done and that they are prepared to do it, and that's it. There is no real reassurance. And if you, few years down the road, if I discover that actually didn't happen, then I have the capacity to sue them. But that doesn't really change the problem in itself, because I need to find a lawyer to help me pass the complaint, to do the follow-up. I need money to go to the judge and to the court, wait for the resolution, and most of the time, if anything, the money is going to come to the European Union and even to me as the affected person. So it makes no sense whatsoever nowadays to, one, not involve programmers into that mentality so that they know exactly what is their voice and what is their responsibility on crafting that software. And two, we can craft software that is going to be observant to human rights and digital rights. And in that particular context, we see DLTs as a very powerful technology ally, because it will allow us to keep track of specific guarantees and specific certifications that we are providing on services that we are executing or ensuring as, or rather enjoying as users. All right, so in order to give you some context to that specific answer, I'm going to explain my own personal experience in both fields. I used to be an IT guy, and I was a weirdo IT guy. I was absolutely out of place because I was the one asking questions. Do we really need this? Is it really going to solve the problem that we have? Is it actually going to create more problems? Can we stop sending that many emails to students? I used to work in a school as an IT manager, because we are just basically flooding them with too much notifications, and too much information is basically just driving them crazy. Can we rationalize a bit all of this? And I myself moved out of IT because things were getting too crazy, and everything was IT for IT because of IT. But there was no conversation on whether we really need this or that. And plus the industry really works in very specific ways where those questions are not very much welcome. Now that I'm working on the development and humanitarian field, I'm again the weirder one, because I'm trying to provide some conversation on how technology can actually help. And you are regarded as you want to turn everything into technology. That's not the case. You always have to consider what is the problem, what do you want to solve, is there technology that are going to help you implement accordingly. But not everything is going to be solved by technology, essentially because I cannot eat technology. That's a very basic thing. Now, what we cannot avoid is to start thinking about the consequences of the fact that we are turning more and more and more digital, that there is the possibility that at some point those digital representations are going to be acting upon or on behalf of us in a parallel ways, and that we need to start thinking how we're going to be configuring and programming those environments and that infrastructure so it doesn't create any negative impact towards us. So if the analog world is creating the digital world, we cannot create it in a way that is actually becoming an enemy of the analog world. And that includes how it's programmed, how we are providing the resources. We've been discussing about deep mining, deep sea mining and whatnot, so that we cannot be depleted or attacked back because of the creation of infrastructure and software in those digital worlds.